The sirens wailed as 3 squad cars surrounded my 19-year-old pregnant niece. Weapons drawn, because Karen Morrison claimed she was stealing groceries she'd already paid for. But Karen had no idea who she was messing with or that. My lawyer was already on speed dial, ready to unleash a lawsuit that would expose the shocking truth about her husband's illegal business dealings. Sometimes, karma doesn't just knock ... it kicks down the door. Marcus Webb stood in his kitchen, coffee mug halfway to his lips, watching his 19-year-old niece Emma carefully arrange prenatal vitamins into a weekly pill organizer. The morning, sunlight caught the gentle curve of her 6-month belly as she sat at his breakfast table, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, concentration etched across her young face. "You don't have to do that here every morning, Em," Marcus said, setting down his mug. "I can drive you to your apartment, help you get organized there." Emma looked up, her green eyes, so much like her late mother's, filled with a stubborn independence that Marcus both admired and worried about. "Uncle Marcus, I'm pregnant, not helpless. Besides, your kitchen has better lighting, and Dr. Peterson said consistency is key with these supplements." Marcus nodded, though his protective instincts had been on high alert since Emma moved to Millbrook 3 months ago. After her boyfriend abandoned her, upon learning about the pregnancy, and with her father deployed overseas, Marcus had become her anchor. As the town's most successful defense attorney, he was used to fighting battles for others, but nothing had prepared him for the fierce protectiveness he felt watching his niece navigate pregnancy alone. "I know you're capable," he said gently. "I just worry about you doing everything by yourself. Maybe I should come grocery shopping with you today." "Absolutely not." Emma's laugh was warm but firm. "I'm not some fragile flower, and I won't become one just because I'm having a baby. Besides, I need to prove to myself that I can handle normal things like buying food without my lawyer uncle hovering over me." The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. In courtrooms, he was known as the Hammer, relentless, strategic, uncompromising. Judges respected him, opposing counsel feared him, and criminals knew that crossing Marcus Webb meant facing someone who never lost. But here, watching his pregnant teenage niece tackle the mundane challenge of organizing vitamins, he felt utterly powerless. Emma stood, smoothing her maternity dress, a simple blue cotton number that Marcus had bought her the week before. "I'll be fine, Uncle Marcus. It's just Millbrook Market. What's the worst that could happen?" Those words would haunt Marcus for hours. Emma drove her uncle's spare Honda Civic to Millbrook Market, a medium-sized grocery store that served the upscale suburban community. She'd been shopping here regularly since moving to town, and the routine had become comforting, something normal in a life that had been turned upside down by an unplanned pregnancy and sudden abandonment. She grabbed a cart and began working through her carefully planned list. The baby had been making her crave strange combinations lately: pickles and peanut butter, vanilla ice cream with hot sauce, strawberries dipped in ranch dressing. Her obstetrician had assured her these cravings were normal, even if they made her feel slightly embarrassed at the checkout line. Today's list was more conventional: fresh vegetables, lean proteins, whole grains, and the organic prenatal tea that Dr. Peterson had recommended. Emma moved through the aisles methodically, checking prices carefully. Her savings from her part-time job at the campus bookstore were stretching thin, even with Uncle Marcus's help. She was comparing prices on organic versus conventional apples, when she became aware of someone watching her. Glancing up, she saw a woman in her 50s standing near the citrus display, staring with undisguised disapproval. The woman had perfectly styled blonde hair, expensive clothing, and the kind of pinched expression that suggested she found the world perpetually disappointing. Emma recognized her as Karen Morrison, wife of the town's most prominent real estate developer. She'd seen her at various community events, always surrounded by other well-dressed women, always complaining about something: the teenagers at the park, the noise from construction projects, the declining standards of the neighborhood. Emma selected her apples and moved on, but she could feel Karen's eyes following her. The sensation made her skin crawl, but she tried to ignore it, focusing instead on finding the items on her list. In the cereal aisle, Karen appeared again, this time standing close enough that Emma could smell her overwhelming perfume. "Excuse me," Karen said, her voice carrying the artificial sweetness of someone who'd learned to weaponize politeness. "Are you finding everything you need?" Emma looked up, confused. "I'm sorry. It's just that I've been watching you, and you seem to be taking an awfully long time to shop. Almost like you're waiting for something, or someone." The implication in Karen's tone was clear, though Emma couldn't understand what she was suggesting. "I'm just grocery shopping, same as everyone else." Karen's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course you are, dear. It's just that we've had some problems with shoplifting lately, and the manager asked us regular customers to keep an eye out for suspicious behavior." Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks. Suspicious behavior. Oh, people who linger too long, who seem nervous, who don't quite fit in with our usual clientele. Karen's gaze pointedly dropped to Emma's belly, then to her clothes, then to the modest sedan, visible through the store's windows. "I'm sure you understand." Emma's hands tightened on her shopping cart. She wanted to say something, to defend herself, but the part of her that had been raised to respect her elders kept her quiet. Instead, she simply nodded and moved away, her heart pounding with a mixture of anger and humiliation. But Karen wasn't finished. Over the next 20 minutes, as Emma completed her shopping, Karen appeared repeatedly in the dairy section, ostensibly checking the expiration dates on milk while watching Emma select yogurt. In the produce area, examining tomatoes while keeping one eye on Emma's cart. Near the pharmacy, pretending to read greeting cards while Emma picked up her prenatal vitamins. Each encounter felt more intimidating than the last. Emma began second-guessing her every movement, wondering if she was somehow doing something wrong. If there was some unspoken rule of grocery shopping that she was violating. When she finally made her way to the checkout line, Karen was already there, 2 customers ahead, turning repeatedly to stare. Emma's hands shook slightly as she began placing items on the conveyor belt. Hyper-aware of every movement under Karen's scrutiny, the teenage cashier, a girl Emma recognized from her brief time at the local community college, smiled warmly. "Hi, how are you feeling? You're glowing." "Thank you," Emma managed, grateful for the kindness. "I'm doing well." As the cashier scanned her items, Emma noticed Karen had finished paying but hadn't left. Instead, she was standing near the customer service desk, cell phone in hand, speaking in hushed, urgent tones to someone. Emma paid for her groceries with cash. She'd learned to budget carefully and preferred not to use credit cards, and began loading bags into her cart. The total was $73.84, well within her budget, and she had the receipt tucked safely in her purse. She was halfway to her car when she heard rapid footsteps behind her. "Excuse me? Excuse me?" Emma turned to see Karen Morrison approaching, flanked by a store security guard and the manager, a nervous-looking man in his 30s. "I'm sorry," the manager said, looking uncomfortable, "but we need to check your receipt and your bags." Emma blinked in confusion. "I'm sorry. There's been a report that you may have taken items without paying for them," the security guard said, his tone apologetic but firm. Emma's heart began pounding. "That's impossible. I paid for everything. I have my receipt right here." She fumbled in her purse, hands shaking with adrenaline and disbelief. "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding," the manager said, casting an uncomfortable glance at Karen, who was standing with her arms crossed, looking vindicated. Emma found her receipt and handed it over, watching as the manager compared it to the contents of her bags. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment as other customers began to stare, whispering among themselves. "Everything looks fine," the manager said after a thorough check. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience." But Karen stepped forward, her voice carrying across the parking lot. "Did you check under the cart? People hide things under the cart, or in their purses, or even under their clothes." Her gaze dropped meaningfully to Emma's belly. The implication hit Emma like a physical blow. This woman was suggesting she was hiding stolen goods under her maternity dress, using her pregnancy as cover for theft. "Ma'am," the security guard said gently to Karen, "we've checked everything. There's no indication of any wrongdoing, but I saw her acting suspicious inside," Karen insisted, her voice growing louder. "Lurking around, taking forever to shop, looking nervous. And she paid with cash? Who pays with cash anymore unless they're trying to avoid leaving a paper trail?" Emma found her voice, though it shook with rage and humiliation. "I paid with cash because I'm on a budget. I'm 19 and pregnant, trying to be responsible with money. There's nothing suspicious about that." "Don't you raise your voice at me, young lady," Karen snapped. "I know your type." Moving into our Marcus Webb's BMW roared into the Millbrook Market parking lot like a missile seeking its target. He could see the cluster of police cars, the crowd of gawkers with their phones raised, and in the center of it all, his pregnant niece sitting in the back of a patrol car, tears streaming down her face. Sheriff Carlos Rodriguez was already walking toward him, his weathered face grim. They'd known each other for 20 years. Rodriguez is a beat cop who'd worked his way up. Marcus as the prosecutor turned defense attorney who'd earned respect on both sides of the law. "Marcus, before you go nuclear, tell me." Marcus cut him off, his voice deadly quiet. "Your niece is fine. No charges have been filed. But we've got a situation here that's about to explode if we don't handle it carefully." Marcus's eyes swept the scene, cataloging details with the systematic precision that had made him legendary in courtrooms. Karen Morrison stood near the store entrance, still holding court with her audience, gesturing dramatically as she recounted her version of events. The store manager looked like he wanted to disappear. 3 officers were interviewing witnesses, while 2 more stood guard near Emma's patrol car. "What exactly happened?" Rodriguez pulled out his notepad. "According to Mrs. Morrison, your niece was acting suspiciously inside the store, taking too long to shop, appearing nervous, lurking around various aisles. She claims she observed what she believed to be shoplifting behavior and reported it to store security. And according to Emma, she says she was just grocery shopping, has receipts for everything, items all check out. Security footage shows normal shopping behavior." But Morrison was insistent, called 911, claimed your niece became aggressive and threatening when confronted. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Aggressive and threatening? A 19-year-old pregnant girl became aggressive and threatening to a grown woman. That's what she claims." And you believed her enough to put my niece in the back of a patrol car? Rodriguez's expression hardened. Marcus, you know me better than that. We responded to a 911 call about a potential theft and a disturbance. We're following protocol. But I'll be honest, this whole thing stinks. Your niece is terrified. The store employees look uncomfortable, and Morrison seems more interested in putting on a show than in actual justice. As if summoned by their conversation, Karen Morrison approached, flanked by two women who appeared to be her friends. She moved with the confident stride of someone accustomed to getting her way, her perfectly styled hair catching the sunlight like a crown. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying the authoritative tone of someone speaking to subordinates. "Are you this girl's father?" Marcus turned to face her, and something in his expression made the women behind Karen take an involuntary step backward. "I'm her uncle, Marcus Webb." Recognition flickered in Karen's eyes, followed quickly by calculation. She knew the name. Everyone in Millbrook knew Marcus Webb, but rather than backing down, she seemed to puff up with even more self-importance. "Well, Mr. Webb, I'm sure you'll want to have a serious talk with your niece about her behavior today. What she did was completely unacceptable, and frankly, I'm considering pressing charges for harassment and intimidation." Marcus let the silence stretch, studying Karen with the same intensity he brought to cross-examining hostile witnesses. When he finally spoke, his voice was conversational, almost friendly. "Mrs. Morrison, isn't it? Karen Morrison, married to David Morrison of Morrison Development Group?" "Yes, and I don't see what that has to do with." "Oh, it has everything to do with it," Marcus said, his smile never wavering. "You see, I've been spending quite a lot of time lately reviewing your husband's business practices. Financial records, building permits, zoning applications, fascinating reading." Karen's confident expression faltered slightly. "I don't know what you're implying, but I'm not implying anything, Mrs. Morrison. I'm stating facts. For instance, the fact that Morrison Development Group has been filing fraudulent environmental impact reports for the past 3 years. The fact that your husband has been bribing city council members to approve projects that should never have been built. The fact that federal investigators have been very interested in my findings." The color drained from Karen's face. Behind her, her friends exchanged worried glances. Marcus continued, his voice growing colder with each word. "But what really interests me, Mrs. Morrison, is what happened here today. Because what I see is a wealthy white woman who decided to harass a pregnant teenager for the crime of shopping while young and not quite fitting into your narrow definition of acceptable. That's not—" "Let me finish." Marcus's voice cut through her protest like a blade. "You called the police on my niece with false accusations. You've publicly humiliated her, caused her emotional distress, and potentially endangered her pregnancy with your reckless behavior. And you did it all while being recorded by dozens of witnesses." Karen's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish gasping for air. "So here's what's going to happen," Marcus said, pulling out his phone. "I'm going to make a few calls. First to my private investigator, who's going to pull every piece of security footage from this store and every witness statement. Then to my media contacts. Because this story, wealthy developer's wife harasses pregnant teenager, is going to be very interesting to local news stations. You can't. Then I'm calling the state attorney general's office, because harassment, based on age, pregnancy status, and economic discrimination, are serious civil rights violations. After that, I'll contact the federal investigators who are already building a case against your husband's company." Karen's friends had begun backing away, clearly wanting no part of whatever was about to unfold. "But most importantly," Marcus said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, "I'm going to file the largest civil lawsuit this county has ever seen. False imprisonment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, harassment, discrimination, defamation. By the time I'm finished, Mrs. Morrison, you're going to wish you'd never heard the name Emma Webb." Sheriff Rodriguez, who had been listening to this exchange with growing interest, stepped forward. "Marcus, let's all take a step back here. Actually, Carlos, I think we're just getting started." Marcus's attention remained fixed on Karen, who now looked like she might faint. "Mrs. Morrison, do you have anything you'd like to say to my niece? Perhaps an apology for this monumental error in judgment." Karen's mouth worked silently for several seconds before she managed to whisper, I was just trying to protect the community." "Protect the community," Marcus repeated thoughtfully. "From a pregnant teenager buying groceries. Tell me, Mrs. Morrison, what exactly did you think she was protecting the community from?" The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Everyone within earshot, officers, store employees, customers, had gone silent, waiting for response. She was acting suspicious. Suspicious how? Be specific. She was taking too long, looking around nervously. So let me understand this. A pregnant teenager, shopping carefully and checking prices because she's on a budget, appeared suspicious to you, and your solution was to call the police and accuse her of theft. Karen's face crumpled. "I made a mistake." "Yes, you did. A very expensive mistake." Marcus turned to Sheriff Rodriguez. "Carlos, I want every officer's body camera footage from this incident. I want witness statements from every person who saw what happened, and I want my niece released immediately. Already in progress, Rodriguez said, gesturing to one of his officers, who moved toward Emma's patrol car. As the car door opened and Emma stepped out, Marcus felt his heart clench. She looked so young, so vulnerable, her face streaked with tears and her hands shaking. But when their eyes met, he saw something else in her expression, not just fear, but anger. Good. She would need that anger for what was coming. Emma ran to him, and Marcus wrapped her in his arms, feeling the slight tremor that ran through her body. I'm sorry, she whispered against his chest. I didn't do anything wrong, Uncle Marcus. I swear I didn't do anything wrong. I know, sweetheart, I know. Over Emma's head, Marcus caught sight of Karen Morrison, still standing frozen. Near the store entrance, their eyes met, and he saw recognition of her situation finally dawning in her expression. Uncle Marcus, Emma said, pulling back slightly. I recorded part of what she said to me, on my phone, before the police came. Marcus felt a predatory smile spread across his face. Did you now? Emma nodded, wiping her eyes. She said some things about my type and these people. I was so upset I almost forgot, but I recorded it when she started getting really nasty. Can I hear it? Emma fumbled with her phone, finding the audio file. Even in the noisy parking lot, Karen's voice came through clearly. I know your type, moving into our neighborhood, thinking you can get away with whatever you want because you're pregnant and people will feel sorry for you. The words hit the crowd like a physical force. Several people gasped audibly. One of the officers shook his head in disgust, but it was Karen's friends who provided the most damning reaction. One of them, a woman in an expensive tracksuit, looked at Karen with obvious horror. Karen, what were you thinking? She hissed. Marcus looked up from Emma's phone to find Karen Morrison staring at him with the expression of someone who had just realized they were standing on the T. At 6:47 p.m., exactly 4 hours after the incident at Millbrook Market, Marcus Webb's doorbell rang with the aggressive persistence of someone accustomed to immediate compliance. Emma, who had been napping on the living room couch, startled awake. As Marcus moved toward the front door, already knowing who he would find there, through the peephole, he saw David Morrison standing on his front porch, flanked by two men in expensive suits. Morrison was tall, silver-haired, and carried himself with the predatory confidence of someone who had built an empire by crushing obstacles. The men beside him had the unmistakable look of high-priced legal muscle. Marcus opened the door but didn't step aside, his body language making it clear that this was not an invitation to enter. David, he said with cold politeness, I was wondering when you'd show up. Morrison's smile was all teeth and no warmth. Marcus, we need to talk. No, we don't. I think we do. Morrison's voice carried the undertone of barely controlled rage. My wife made a mistake today. She's apologized. But now I hear you're planning to drag my family through some kind of media circus over a simple misunderstanding. Marcus leaned against the doorframe, appearing relaxed despite the tension crackling in the air. A simple misunderstanding. Is that what we're calling racially motivated harassment now? Let's not be dramatic. Let's be accurate. Marcus cut him off. Your wife targeted my pregnant 19-year-old niece, falsely accused her of theft, called the police with fabricated claims, and caused her to be detained and humiliated in front of dozens of witnesses. The only misunderstanding here is your wife's apparent belief that she could get away with it. One of Morrison's lawyers, a sharp-faced man with predatory eyes, stepped forward. Mr. Webb, I'm Jonathan Sterling from Sterling Hayes & Associates. We represent the Morrison family interests. Perhaps we could discuss this situation more privately. Marcus's laugh was devoid of humor. Sterling Hayes & Associates, the firm that specializes in covering up corporate malfeasance and making inconvenient problems disappear. How appropriate. Sterling's expression didn't change, but his eyes hardened. We're prepared to offer your niece a substantial settlement to resolve this matter quickly and quietly. How substantial? Morrison spoke up clearly, thinking he'd found his opening. $50,000, cash, in exchange for a signed non-disclosure agreement, and your assurance that this incident won't be pursued further. Marcus appeared to consider this for a moment, then shook his head. Counteroffer. Your wife publicly apologizes, undergoes mandatory sensitivity training, performs 200 hours of community service working with pregnant teenagers, and you shut down Morrison Development Group's illegal operations permanently. The silence that followed was electric. Morrison's face had gone purple with rage. You arrogant son of a careful David. We're being recorded. Marcus gestured almost imperceptibly toward the security cameras mounted under his porch eaves. Wouldn't want to add verbal threats to the growing list of charges. Sterling placed a restraining hand on Morrison's arm. Mr. Webb, let's be reasonable here. Your niece experienced an unfortunate situation, but she wasn't physically harmed. A generous settlement would allow everyone to move forward. You're right about one thing, Marcus said. This is about moving forward. Moving forward with a federal investigation into your client's business practices that's been building momentum for the past 6 months. Morrison's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Oh, didn't your legal team tell you? The FBI has been very interested in my research into Morrison Development Group, fraudulent environmental impact reports, bribery of city officials, illegal dumping, construction code violations that put families at risk. Quite a comprehensive criminal enterprise you've built, David. The color drained from Morrison's face. Behind him, his lawyers exchanged alarmed glances. Marcus continued, his voice conversational but deadly. Of course, I've been building this case methodically, waiting for the right moment to present my findings to federal prosecutors. But after what your wife did to my niece today, I think that moment has arrived. You can't prove any of that, Morrison said, but his voice lacked conviction. Can't I tell me? David, do you remember a man named Roberto Vasquez? Construction foreman who tried to blow the whistle on your illegal dumping practices 3 years ago. Morrison's face went ashen. Interesting story. Roberto's came to you with concerns about toxic waste being buried at the Meadowbrook Elementary construction site. And what happened to Roberto after he raised those concerns? He was terminated for cause. He was terminated, yes, but not for cause. He was terminated because he refused to stay quiet about practices that could poison children. And when he went to the city building inspector, that inspector who had been receiving monthly payments from your company buried his report. Sterling stepped forward again. Mr. Webb, these are very serious accusations. Do you have proof of these claims? Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Photographs of the illegal dumping, bank records showing payments to city officials, recorded conversations with former employees who were ordered to falsify safety reports, soil samples from the elementary school site showing toxic contamination, levels that would make your hair fall out. He held up the envelope but didn't offer it to them. And the crown jewel, Roberto Vasquez himself, very much alive and very eager to testify about what he witnessed. Morrison stumbled backward, as if he'd been physically struck. Vasquez is dead. He died in a car accident 2 years ago. Marcus's smile was terrifying. Did he? That's interesting, because I had lunch with him yesterday. Turns out Roberto is very much alive and has been living under an assumed name because he was afraid for his safety. Can't imagine why. The silence stretched on for nearly a minute. Emma had appeared in the hallway behind Marcus, listening to the exchange with growing amazement. Finally, Sterling spoke, his voice carefully controlled. What do you want? What? I've always wanted justice. Your client has been poisoning this community for years, lining his pockets while putting families at risk. The only reason he's not already in federal prison is because I wanted to build an airtight case. And now his wife has made this personal. She targeted my family, traumatized my niece, and showed the entire community exactly what kind of people the Morrisons really are. So I'm accelerating my timeline. Marcus stepped forward, and Morrison instinctively backed away. Monday morning, I'm delivering my complete file to the FBI field office in Richmond. By Monday afternoon, federal agents will be executing search warrants on every property owned by Morrison Development Group. By Tuesday, the story will be front-page news in every paper from here to Washington. You can't, I can, and I will. Unless ... Morrison leaned forward eagerly. Unless what? Unless your wife faces real consequences for what she did today, not money consequences. She pleads guilty to harassment charges, performs community service, and makes a public apology that includes an admission of her discriminatory motivations. Absolutely not, Sterling interjected. A guilty plea would create civil liability. There's already civil liability, Marcus said coldly. The question is whether the Morrisons want to face it as private citizens or as defendants in a federal criminal case. Morrison was sweating now. His earlier confidence completely evaporated. What about the federal investigation? If Karen does what you're asking, will you drop it? Marcus's laugh was harsh. David, you really don't understand what's happening here, do you? The federal investigation isn't leverage, it's justice. Children have been exposed to toxic chemicals because of your company's illegal practices. Families have been endangered because you bribed inspectors to look the other way. Workers have been silenced and threatened for trying to do the right thing. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. What your wife did to my niece today didn't create this problem. It just made me stop caring about doing this quietly. Emma moved to stand beside her uncle, her young face set with determination. Mrs. Morrison didn't just hurt me today. She showed everyone exactly who she really is. And now everyone's going to know who you really are too. Morrison stared at her as if seeing her for the first time not as an obstacle to be managed, but as a person whose life his family had tried to destroy. She's 19 years old. David, Marcus said quietly, 19, pregnant, trying to build a life for herself and her child. And your wife decided she was a threat that needed to be eliminated. Karen made a mistake. Karen revealed her true character. And now the entire community gets to see what the Morrison family is really about. Sterling whispered urgently, in Morrison's ear, but Morrison shook his head violently. How do I know you won't pursue the federal case, even if Karen pleads guilty? Marcus's expression didn't change. You don't, because the federal case was never about today's incident. It's about justice for every family you've endangered, every worker you've silenced, every official you've corrupted. Today just made me stop caring about your feelings. Morrison's composure finally cracked. You self-righteous bastard. You think you're some kind of white knight, but you're just another lawyer looking to make a name for himself. Maybe, Marcus said calmly, but I'm a lawyer with a briefcase full of EV. The attack came at 3:17 a.m., exactly 12 hours after Agent Chen had driven away with David Morrison in federal custody. Emma was jolted awake by the sound of shattering glass and her uncle's voice shouting her name from downstairs. She struggled out of bed, her 6-month belly making quick movement difficult, and rushed to the window. The sight that greeted her made her blood run cold. Marcus's BMW was engulfed in flames in the driveway, and 3 figures in dark clothing were running toward a waiting van. Emma. Marcus's voice came from the hallway, urgent but controlled. Get away from the windows and call 911. As sirens wailed in the distance and the fire department worked to extinguish the blazing car, Sheriff Rodriguez arrived with a team of deputies. His face was grim as he surveyed the scene. This is escalation, he told Marcus quietly. Firebombing your car, threatening messages there, trying to scare you off the case. Marcus stood in his bathrobe on the front lawn, watching his car burn, his expression unreadable. Carlos, they just made the biggest mistake of their lives. How do you figure? Because now they've committed arson, destruction of property, and criminal intimidation against a federal witness. Agent Chen is going to add another 5 years to whatever charges Morrison was already facing. But even as Marcus spoke with confidence, Emma could see the tension in his shoulders. The way his eyes constantly scanned the darkness beyond the firelight. The Morrisons had crossed the line, and everyone knew that desperate people were capable of anything. As dawn broke over Millbrook, the real scope of the Morrison family's desperation began to unfold. Marcus's phone rang at 6:30 a.m. with a call from his law firm's senior partner. Marcus, we have a problem, Harold Brennan said without preamble. I just got a call from the State Bar Association. Someone has filed a formal complaint against you, alleging prosecutorial misconduct, conflict of interest, and abuse of your position to conduct a personal vendetta. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. Who filed the complaint? Sterling, Hayes and Associates, on behalf of an anonymous client. They're claiming you've been using your position as a defense attorney to conduct unauthorized investigations into David Morrison's business dealings. That's absurd. Every investigation I've conducted has been completely legal and ethical. I know that, and you know that. But Marcus, they're asking for an emergency hearing to have your law license suspended pending a full investigation. If they succeed, you won't be able to represent your niece or pursue the federal case. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the full weight of the Morrison family's counterattack. They couldn't win on the merits, so they were trying to eliminate their opposition entirely. When's the hearing? This afternoon at 2 p.m.? Marcus, I'm going to be honest with you, this is a coordinated attack. Someone with serious resources is trying to destroy your career over this case. After ending the call, Marcus found Emma in the kitchen, making breakfast with the determined normalcy of someone refusing to be intimidated. But he could see the fear in her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly as she poured orange juice. Uncle Marcus, what's happening? He sat down across from her, choosing his words carefully. They're trying to stop me from representing you. By attacking my law license, it's a desperate move, but it could be effective if we don't handle it correctly. Emma set down her glass with more force than necessary. So they burn your car, threaten us, and now they're trying to destroy your career. All because their precious Karen got caught being a racist. It's bigger than that now, Em. The federal investigation has them facing decades in prison. Your case with Karen was just the spark that lit the fuse. Emma was quiet for a moment, then looked up with the same determined expression Marcus had seen the day before. What can I do to help? Nothing. This is my fight now. No, it's not. Emma's voice was firm. This started because that woman decided I didn't belong in her store. I'm not going to hide while you lose everything trying to defend me. Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from Agent Chen. Emergency meeting at Federal Building. 9 a.m. Come alone. The Richmond Federal Building was a fortress of glass and steel that projected the uncompromising authority of the United States government. Agent Chen met Marcus in a secure conference room, her expression more serious than he'd ever seen it. Marcus, we have a situation. David Morrison made bail this morning. Marcus felt his stomach drop. How is that possible? He's facing federal charges. His lawyers argued that he wasn't a flight risk, that he had deep community ties, and that the charges were based on questionable evidence. The judge set bail at $2 million, which Morrison posted within an hour, and now my car is a burned-out shell in my driveway. Chen nodded grimly. We're treating that as witness intimidation. But Marcus, there's something else you need to know. Morrison didn't just make Bailey's been busy. Very busy. She slid a folder across the table. In the past 8 hours, Morrison Development Group has filed lawsuits against you, your law firm, the county sheriff's department, and 3 local news stations that reported on yesterday's incident. They're claiming defamation, harassment, and intentional interference with business relationships. Marcus opened the folder, scanning the legal documents with growing disbelief. They're suing everyone involved and exposing them. It gets worse. They've also filed a motion to have Emma declared an unreliable witness due to emotional instability caused by her pregnancy. They're claiming that her hormonal state makes her testimony questionable. Marcus's vision actually blurred with rage. They're attacking a pregnant teenager's credibility based on her pregnancy status. Do they have any idea what kind of legal hellfire they've just unleashed? I don't think they care about legal consequences anymore, Chen said quietly. I think they're in full scorched earth mode. They know they're going down, so they're trying to take everyone with them. What about Karen? Where is she in all this? Chen's expression darkened. That's the interesting part. Karen Morrison filed for divorce this morning. Her attorney claimed she had no knowledge of her husband's business activities and was manipulated into the incident at the grocery store. Marcus stared at her. She's trying to throw David under the bus to save herself. Looks that way. But Marcus, there's something else. Something that changes everything. Chen pulled out a second folder, this one marked with red confidential stamps. Last night, after David Morrison made bail, we got a call from someone who wanted to make a deal. Someone with information about the Morrison family that goes back years. Who? Roberto Vasquez, the construction foreman you mentioned yesterday. He didn't just witness illegal dumping. He documented everything. Photos, videos, recorded conversations with David Morrison personally ordering him to bury toxic waste. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. How much evidence are we talking about? Enough to put David Morrison away for the rest of his life. But Roberto wants protection for his family, and he wants assurance that his testimony will actually matter. What kind of assurance? Chen leaned forward. He wants to know that you're going to be able to see this through, because if Morrison's legal team succeeds in destroying your career, Roberto goes back into hiding, and our case falls apart. The weight of responsibility settled on Marcus's shoulders like a physical burden. This wasn't just about Emma anymore. It was about every family Morrison had endangered, every worker he'd silenced, every official he'd corrupted. Agent Chen, I need you to do something for me. What? I need you to arrange for Emma to give her testimony today, before the state bar hearing, before Morrison's lawyers can file any more motions. I want her statement on the record while I still have the legal standing to represent her. Chen nodded. We can do that. But Marcus, if you lose your license, if I lose my license, you'll have to find another way to get justice for Roberto and all the other people Morrison has hurt. But I'm not going down without a fight. 3 hours later, Emma sat in the same federal building conference room, court reporters' fingers flying over her stenotype machine, as she gave her formal statement about the incident at Millbrook Market. Her voice was steady, her recollection precise, and her emotional impact undeniable. Mrs. Morrison didn't just accuse me of shoplifting, Emma said, looking directly at Agent Chen. She made it clear that she thought I didn't belong in her store, in her neighborhood, in her world. She used my pregnancy, my age, my economic status as weapons against me. And how did that make you feel? Chen asked gently. Powerless, ashamed, afraid for my baby's safety, but also angry. Angry that someone could treat another human being that way and expect to get away with it. After Emma finished her testimony, Marcus walked her to the building's exit, where Sheriff Rodriguez was waiting to escort her home. Uncle Marcus, Emma said, are you going to be okay? Marcus looked at his niece, 19 years old, 6 months pregnant, facing down one of the most powerful families in the county, with nothing but courage and conviction, and felt a surge of pride so intense it nearly brought him to his knees. Whatever happens at the hearing today, I want you to know something. You've shown more strength and integrity in the past 2 days than most people show in a lifetime. Your baby is going to have an incredible mother, Emma.